Okay, another great panel. And now we're to our last session of the day. But before we do that, I would like to introduce Ashley Hahn of Torque Robotics in the audience. I can't see out there, Ashley, but please raise your hand. It's great to have Torque participating in our conference, and they have a great intention of collaborating with us in the future. And as we look to the continued evolution of autonomous trucking in the Northern Plains, I'd also like to thank Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. If Leanne Jangula is here, thank you very much. If not, and you're watching this recording, thank you for the grant that you gave us, which is a great opportunity, which really got the entire ball rolling here. And without that grant, might not be standing up here today talking with you. Well, we've had a lot of discussion thus far about challenges to widespread and year-round autonomous truck operations in northern regions, and we'd like to explore that a little bit more in this panel. We've had some changes to the original program that you have in front of us. Jessica Rojkowski of MITRE Corporation was unable to make it, as well as John Dej of the PLUM Catalyst. Instead of John, we have Justin Johnson of the PLUM Catalyst, which is a strategy and innovation consulting firm that's focused on future mobility and next generation transportation initiatives. Justin is the deputy program manager for the autonomous vehicle deployment that was mentioned earlier, called GoMarty, and he is actively involved with various and connected autonomous tasks across several states and national consortia. Also on our panel, we're going to have Eric Belford of Montana DOT, who was just up here. So I'm going to ask Justin and Eric to join me again for the last panel. I'll also make a time change announcement. In your program, it says the networking reception and poster display at 5:30. That was supposed to be 5. So we'll segue directly from this last segment into our reception and poster session. So Justin, if you could come to the podium, please.
Okay, so I guess it's just Eric and I between cocktails and happy hour. So we'll do our best to stay on time here. Thank you everyone for the opportunity to present today. We're talking about challenges with winter and rural automation, which is maybe a little bit of a different take from a lot of the cool presentations that we have heard earlier. Everything's focused on, like everybody said, kind of attacking that initial use case, and I really appreciate learning how all that's going. I think our perspective is a little bit different, and as Corey alluded to, the pilot programs that were taken in Minnesota were really about understanding what the opportunities are, what the challenges are, hopefully starting to learn a little bit about what it would take to have a fully autonomous system in a rural or winter climate. And so I'm going to spend some time on that, but a little bit about PLUM Catalyst. So my boss likes to say it's not just a cool color. It also is an acronym that sort of describes the kinds of things that we do as a company. So passion, learning, understanding, and mobilization. And we're a team of about 10 people. We work in Texas and California and Minnesota. And really the goal for us is to help transportation technologies, emerging transportation technologies, to make roads safer, promote sustainability, and also grow our current workforce. And tomorrow we're going to talk a little bit about workforce development and community engagement. Those are two aspects of all these projects that are really near and dear to our hearts and what we do for our mission as a company. But I'm going to try my best to save that for tomorrow. So today we're just talking about GoMarty. GoMarty and the technical aspects of GoMarty as much as we can. So GoMarty is a autonomous shuttle program, and I'm going to go over a little bit about what that is, the goals of the project, and then dive right into some data and some things that we've learned and some challenges that we've run into along the way. If people have questions right away, feel free to interrupt me. Otherwise, I'm sure we'll have time at the end. Hopefully we save some time. So, like I said, Go Marty is a pilot program. It started out being funded by the CAVX office that Corey works at, who is just up here from MnDOT. They did a whole host of pilots, one that was focused on sort of a city center, one that was more of like a suburban community, and then this more rural pilot. And so why Grand Rapids? Grand Rapids meets pretty much that requirement of a small community, but one that's very interested in technology and understanding, what they can do to help people in their community be able to get mobile, to be able to go places. And so that's really one of the tenets of the project. You can see some of the stats here. It's about 10,000 people. There's a much higher than average proportion of people 65 or older, as well as much larger than U.S. average people in poverty. And so these are indicators that, transportation or access to transportation could be limited. And in fact, that's one of the things that this community certainly has. And one of the goals of this project is to help provide transportation access. So we've been going for about 3 years, and we've given 30,000 rides. We have, like I said, an emphasis on providing access to transportation, and so we're pretty happy that a big chunk of the rides have been for people with mobility issues or people who can't drive. And so what we've learned is that we really, while we're researching autonomous technology and implementing it, we are also providing rides to people in the community through on-demand transportation that wouldn't otherwise be able to get around. And so, again, I'm going to try to save some of that community engagement talk for tomorrow, but what we can say is that largely the people that have adopted this has become one of their, if not their primary source of transportation around the community. We also are able to offer a lot of jobs to community members, and again, we'll talk about some of that stuff tomorrow. So we also are super excited because just earlier this month, we have launched the expansion to the project. So like I said, the first couple of years were funded through the CAVX office in MnDOT. The next 3 years of operation are funded by a federal highway grant called the ATTAIN program, which is all about testing advanced technologies for transportation. And so we were able to expand to a couple of neighboring communities, which is where a lot of the really big need is actually, right? There's a kind of hub and spoke model that is prevalent in small communities. Grand Rapids has access to a lot of services. Many of the small communities outside of it do not, and they have to come into town. So transportation is even a bigger barrier for a lot of those communities. So this is where we started. The first 3 years, we built up more and more stops over the course of that time. When we ended the program, when we transitioned here, we had about 74 stops in town. And then we added Cohasset, which is sort of the second area, Deer River and Ball Club, which are, Deer River and Ball Club are bordering, and actually Ball Club is in tribal lands. And again, you can see Highway 2 runs right through kind of the main road through town, goes all the way here. It's been really great to be able to offer transportation to those communities. And so it also adds a lot of challenges and a lot of interesting things, which we'll get into. So there's 4 major goals for the project. One of them is testing AV technology in winter and rural weather. That's what we're going to focus on today. We also have a test bed for electric vehicles. We have one fully electric vehicle in the fleet now it's a Volkswagen Buzz, and we're using that to understand some of the limitations of just rural transportation, and we're hoping to learn what the effect of the winter is on a sort of transit service with fully electric vehicle. We also are introducing a multimodal transit application that Minnesota is building, an app that you can sort of integrate all of the different services, transportation services around the state. we will be part of that and testing how people can use that to basically book a ride from Grand Rapids all the way down to the Twin Cities. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes. And then finally, of course, the focus on mobility, the focus on accessibility, and we'll talk about that tomorrow. So I guess most of you guys are from northern Minnesota, northern states, so winter is no shocker to a lot of people. But this is the kind of roadways and areas that we're talking about, right? Grand Rapids, the stats are 50 days out of the year it snows, 70 inches about average snowfall, and more impressively, I didn't know this until I looked it up, but almost like half the days have a chance of freezing. I think that's pretty crazy. So it's definitely not a great place for testing autonomous vehicles, but it's one that we thought was pretty interesting. And so I threw a few different pictures from on the route. You kind of see them as we cycle through. This is actually one of the nicer days in the sense that you can see the pavement. But you can see that the curb's encroaching a bit, and these are some of the things that cause challenges, right? If the road diameter changes, and I think Eric or maybe somebody was talking about how you have to remap when the different seasons and all of the kind of things you use for localization are changing. And certainly the curb encroaching is something that causes a little bit of pause and was definitely an issue early on. But also, when you're picking your stops, that stop there is really beautiful in the summer, but accessibility is really important for us, and being able to roll a wheelchair from the stop to the shuttle to get on is pretty important. And we were pretty shocked that this sidewalk was really not maintained, and then we learned that it's a snowmobile trail that they use. So we were kind of out of luck on that one, but. So you got to do your homework in the winter as well as the summer. We planned all of our stops in the summer. So this is what more traditionally the stops look like. So you can see the hard pack and the ice, and definitely not be able to find the road underneath. And so that definitely poses a problem for a lot of the sensor systems. The Kodiak guys were talking about their having lane lines marked, and then you're good. And that's great, but hard in the winter when you can't see the lane lines. So we've been really working at trying to understand, what are the limitations and what are the things that we actually need. And, they were talking about sensor fusion, and sensor fusion is very important because we need to take effectively a look at all the different sensor inputs and try to figure out, what's usable. And certainly I'm not the expert in that. May Mobility is the company that developed the autonomous vehicle tech that's in these vehicles. These are Toyota Sienna minivans. That's what the fleet consists of. There's a spot in the back for a wheelchair, and then there's seats for up to 3 other passengers, which when there's not a wheelchair in there, we can get 5 people in the vehicles, which is about the size of the microtransit on-demand fleet that we were looking for. So it's been a great fit. So some of the things I know doesn't really apply for you guys. I promise I'm not an expert in long-haul trucking or AV trucking, but I can just tell you what we've learned operating for 3 years, minivans on surface streets. And I think it's pretty interesting, and there might be some ties, but one of the things that we've learned is it's important to consider winter accessibility for stops, especially when people have to trudge through a snowbank to get there. They're not gonna like you very much, but it's a balance, right? Because the autonomous vehicles, they wanna stop mid-block. It's the safest place, it's out of the intersection, they want a nice curb, a nice shoulder to pull off onto. But if you're in a wheelchair, you kind of need to, or the people maintaining the street, you really want people to enter the road from a corner, from an intersection, because that's where your sidewalks come down. That's where there's a curb cut, and certainly in a community that's rural, there's no bus system. I mean, there is a bus system called Arrowhead Transit, which is one of the biggest by square mileage in the country. But they don't have stops on every corner. They have, a few here and there, and they only come by once or twice a day. And so intercity transportation within the city, there's not really a good option. So there aren't already bus stops that we can use. So we're basically making these stops up as we go. And so thinking a lot about that has been the biggest learning for us. How do we make these things useful, safe, both accessible to the vehicles in autonomous mode, but also to the people who sometimes don't have the best mobility or just don't want to go trudging through the snowbank, right? Okay, so there are a few slides that have a lot of words and a few slides that have a lot of numbers, so I apologize for that in advance. But as everybody was talking about what they've learned about the impact of weather on autonomous systems, I thought it'd be cool to share some data. So we've collected 2 years worth of data that we published in a report that's available online, and I'll share you a link at the end. So 2023, I don't know if you guys remember, but it was really snowy. At least for us, it was really snowy. Like one of the snowiest on record. I think we had over 100 inches of snow in Grand Rapids. And so you can see the number of days that it was snowing, especially January, February, March, was almost half of the days in a couple of those months. And so also it was our first winter, and we learned a lot that first winter, I'm not gonna lie. So our autonomy performance was pretty poor. It was kind of just, we ran in with summer, kept running, and realized that we need to have an ability to do something about the way that the vehicle is learning, and effectively decided we're gonna have a summer mode and a winter mode. And so we bifurcated the training data and did everything to make it so that you can basically have summer or winter. And that helped immensely because we weren't trying to apply the things that work in summer, and we weren't trying to apply the things that work in winter in summer. So now, fast forward to 2024, and the autonomy percentages are a lot higher. Sure, there were still days that we couldn't operate. Sure, there were still days that it was very cold. And when I say not operate, what I mean is the sensor limitations from Velodyne or Ouster, or whatever we refer to those as these days, below 0 Fahrenheit, the sensors that's their limit. So days that are below 0, we can still operate. We just operate in manual mode, either for a partial or a whole shift. One of the beauties of having the Siennas is that you can just take over like you would in your Tesla or something if you disengage the autopilot. So that is a really great thing for reliable transportation for the community, but also allowed us to be able to test in some of those scenarios where we need to take over and where we have to drive. And we did take over quite a bit, don't get me wrong. I don't think I want anyone to leave with the perception that this is ready to scale everywhere in snowy climates. But we have learned a lot, and so our unplanned interventions, our planned interventions, everything has started to decrease pretty significantly from that first winter. Now, it's also a little bit not fair because, like I said, that first winter we had 100 inches of snow, and the second winter we had like 30, so it was also a lot easier of a winter. So the good news is that we have 3 more years to test this, and so hopefully we get some more reasonable amounts of snow so that we can actually have a apples-to-apples comparison. The other thing, so you can see, closed, manual, partial, that's what those different days represent, days that we couldn't operate. And if it gets below 20, below 0, then the camera systems are out of spec, and so then we can't operate at all. So, some of the things that we have improved over the course of the first couple of years is related to a lot of snow debris on the road and being able to differentiate those from rocks or those from animals, small children, things like that. So the initial response, again, everything is designed like the same speakers earlier, safety first. And so the initial reaction for any kind of a thing in the road is slow down, stop, avoid. And the reality is, though, in some of those scenarios, when the banks are encroaching, the vehicle kind of starts to have confliction between the GPS and between what it's sensing with LiDAR. And so doing a lot of training early on has really helped us to get a better sense of what's really a snowbank and what's really not a snowbank, and something we actually need to be concerned about or how we can adjust. And I don't claim to be the people, we have not implemented these, that's all main mobility. So what I can tell you is they have something called multi-policy decision making, which is effectively their version of sensor fusion, and it takes into account in winter a lot more reliance on the cameras than in the summer, where the lane lines and everything else are working a lot better. Another thing that worked really well for us was collaboration with the local community. We have, and it sounds silly, but we have a great relationship with the city and just understanding what helps. So you guys say, is there anything we can do for infrastructure to get ready for autonomous vehicles? And well, the answer, like you're saying, is no, because we can't expect everyone to repave all their streets and put on that perfect 3M pavement marking, like just whatever it is. But what we can do is ask for some help in maintaining, clearing the snow from the streets, pushing back the snow to try to maintain kind of an edge, something that we can use that helps. And just everybody learning what helps and what makes this better has really actually helped, as much as the technology advance, together improve the performance of the overall system. So there is something there for sure. And then finally, the operator training, it's the same thing, right? The person who's an operator, who's their job is to be that secondary safety system when the vehicle says you need to take over, they can also take over, right? And so just them being comfortable not needing to take over, that trusting that the vehicle is going to do that with experience is probably a different scenario than what the trucking guys have been talking about, because in this case, we've trained and hired all of the autonomous vehicle operators that run, and they're all local residents, and this is their job. They also have to become comfortable with how the vehicle operates, and as they get more and more comfortable, we start to see their performance increase, and that they are allowing the vehicle to do its job. And that really has also been another contributing factor to the numbers getting higher as we talk about autonomy percentages. So this is an example of disengagements as we look across the 2 winters. So the heat map is where the vehicle has either the driver has taken over or the vehicle has requested the driver take over. And the size of the bubble is how many times it happened at that location. And so just as a trend, you can see that from winter 1 to winter 2, there was significantly less takeovers. And it's a factor of all 3 of those things that we talked about just a couple minutes ago. But really trending in the right direction and helping us to understand where the true limitations of the design domain are and the corner cases versus other factors. So like everybody's been saying, I don't need to spend a lot of time on it. These vehicles use basically a lot of the same sensor systems that the trucks do that we talked about earlier. They all have a form of sensor fusion, and I think to me the key is sort of being able to switch in and out of winter mode. That was really the big thing that has helped us to improve performance significantly versus sort of having this moving needle on training. Another issue is localization. I think people mentioned having some IMUs and using GPS, and that's all fine and good. But rather than our approach, rather than retraining, we don't remap in the winter versus the summer or the fall or anything. But what we do is look for areas where there are not enough features in the environment to help us be able to localize against. And then we had this great opportunity to work with kids. A lot of the high school kids who are in a couple different classes built fixtures for us that we mounted on the side of the roads and displayed whatever they were interested in that they thought represented their community, and we use those as features to localize against. And it's actually helped a lot. So I talked a lot about snow and a lot about winter, but besides that, there's also other challenges in rural, which are things like this: very poor pavement or no pavement, potholes, water on the road or in the area where we're trying to go. And these are challenges that we're just learning more about. Grand Rapids in itself is pretty good, but now that we're extending our reach out into the neighboring communities, this is like everywhere. And figuring out how we're going to navigate that and how we're going to work there and what we're going to learn about the sensor data that we get from vehicles there is something we're just starting to uncover right now. So stay tuned on that one. So I already talked about some of these. I think the biggest thing that takeaway, of course, is that I forget who it was that said it a few minutes ago, but if this was easy, then we'd be doing it everywhere, and that's 100% true. And it's even true at the sites where we're operating. Don't expect perfection on day one. We're all here to learn. These are research projects. We expect there to be driver interventions, we expect there to be places where the software has to learn, has to grow, has to change, and that's true. Of course, that's true. And so we've seen a lot of improvement. It's not ready to scale to the point where we can take a driver out. I think we've been talking a little bit about having remote assist, tele-assist. That's something that's definitely of interest, although Minnesota requires a safety driver, so the tele-assist is mostly to show that it's possible while still maintaining a safety driver. And so that's something that we're hoping to unpack a little bit more over the next 3 years. And also, we talked about all these, but we definitely have added a lot more domains as we've been moving, roundabouts, parking lots, covered pull-throughs. Some of those things were off the table early on, but have since been implemented and have really helped. I can say, and we'll talk more about it tomorrow, but being able to pick people up at the door to their long-term care facility or at the door to the grocery store is a game changer versus having to pick them up out in the street, because that's a big barrier for a lot of people who are interested or rely on this type of transportation. So next steps, I think there's a lot of opportunities. I mean, this is just a short list of a couple things that I think are really on the roadmap that need to be tackled in order for a more broad scale adoption. Some of the things that really are interesting to us in particular, like we talk about tele-assist, really understanding rural cellular coverage is a problem. And we don't, I think, have a good understanding of what the actual requirements are for a reliable tele-assist program. Like, what latency do we really need? It's not like they're driving remotely, like everybody was saying earlier, but there's still a pretty big, reliance on quality cellular service, and that the farther you get away from the U.S. highways, the worse that it gets. And so that's an important one for us. And then I think the bottom one there is there's a lot of opportunities to optimize movement through intersections, particularly AV to AV. We don't have a ton of experience only having 9 of them. Like, they don't often meet in an intersection, but there's a lot that we could take advantage of there when they do, and I think that would be a really interesting project for future work as well. So, of course, nobody can do this alone, and I want to make sure to thank the CAVEX office at MnDOT for the funding for the original Go Marty project. Thank the Federal Highway for the next 3 years here, and there's a ton of local community partnership and support, and we'll talk more about community engagement tomorrow, but that's what really makes this whole thing work is having community buy-in, really being part of the community, and everybody seeing the benefit together versus not. So if anybody's interested in the report for the first 2.5 years, you can hit that QR code. It'll take you to the website, and you can download the copy of that, or visit our website, gomarty.com. It's got a lot of information about the program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Justin. And we'll have a chance for questions in just a few moments. But before we do that, I'd like to ask Eric. Eric, given your extensive knowledge of winter driving conditions in Montana and in North Dakota and the region, and the fact that you do have some testing going on in Montana now with Aurora, how would you see some of the challenges, and what would you see in sort of Justin's presentation that maybe would be learning points that we could build on?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, snow is always a challenge, whether you're in the high plains part of Montana or in the mountainous areas. The differences, they look different simply because in the high plains, you get a lot of drifting. Snow's lighter, drifts around. In the mountainous areas, it's heavier, tends to pile up. You get big snow banks from the plows. When you talk to people, the first anxiety, well, there's 2 anxieties everybody has. It's the animals that we have, and that's been addressed really well today. I think there's good evidence out there to show that's been addressed, and it can be handled better than the human can handle. Snow is a different story, and we really don't have a lot of knowledge to support what can be done with autonomous vehicles when it comes to snow. Additionally, the mountain passes, and obviously commercial vehicle safety is priority one to us when it comes to CMVs, and we all know the hazards that the mountains pose to braking systems with overheating, and you know, the human side of that knows how to handle that, knows how to feel it. So we have a lot to learn about what that looks like from that regard, especially when you're going to add snow to the equation.
Any other thoughts or comments, Eric, about what you see in the future in Montana? Maybe how fast down the road we're looking at some possible operations in winter conditions?
Yeah, one of the things that did come up just recently was regarding snow and mountains. We have a real problem in Montana with our chain law. And every year we have to close our highways because trucks spun out. So we did pass a bill the previous session that not only requires them to put chains on when they're required to put them on, but they're required to carry them at all times. So that's been a popular question that right now is, well, how does a autonomous vehicle comply with the chain laws in Montana? And I don't know how many people are aware, but there's school buses that have the spin-on kind that hang behind. So we're assuming maybe that type of technology would be advanced to accommodate the snow.
Okay, well, we have time for questions from the audience for Justin and/or Eric. I can't see very well, but I see Jody back there, so you have one mic.
First of all, thank you for the presentation. Justin, I have a question for you. During your program, and you said like you have about 80-90% of the engagement on autonomous, so about like 10% to 20% is not engaged with autonomous driving. So I was wondering, do you capture the data like so that we can know what caused the stop of the autonomy? Is it perception, or is decision making, or is it prediction? So I'm trying to figure it out from what function of the autonomy that was distracted.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the answer is maybe not quite super straightforward, unfortunately. It's a combination of a few things. So we do track planned interventions and unplanned interventions. The planned interventions are areas where we just don't enable the autonomy to make a particular move. It's outside of the design domain. That is, you know, changing over time. That's one of the biggest reductions in unplanned interventions, is adding roundabouts and other things. We still are not doing unprotected left turns. So you know, the way to reduce that is in routing right now, which is sort of a cop-out answer. But again, safety first, and we want to make sure that the vehicle is capable of making a move. And in the winter, it's even more cautious because you don't want to spin out like halfway through, you know, with the oncoming traffic. So there's opportunities as the technology improves to implement those very easily. I think the May Mobility has some driver out routes. They're all in the south, in Arizona, and places where the weather is nice. So they certainly have data on what it takes to do that, and the vehicles are capable. It's just a matter of making sure that in our design domain, it applies. And so that's one. The other question, which we alluded to a little bit earlier about drivers or the operators being comfortable in allowing the vehicle to navigate. That's another area where we do see, especially with newer drivers, that they're taking the vehicle out of autonomy more often than necessary, and that's their call, and we always trust that. But you can see as someone gets more seasoned as an operator that intervention starts to go down, and then finally, as the technology improves and I can't speak to, under the hood what specifically is if it's a perception issue or if it's a some other sensor issue. But I can say that if we take out all of the or minimize the impact of those first two as much as we can, the trajectory of the unplanned interventions is down significantly with both training data on the same hardware, and as we launch the 2.0, we've got all new vehicles which have about a 3 kind of generational jump in Maze technology, and our unplanned interventions per mile went from like divide by 4. So that's directly attributed to technology improvements.
Awesome, thank you. Follow-up question. You said like when that happens, the second year you have 2 modes. One is a winter mode, one is summer mode, and you mentioned that the winter mode, when during the winter time turns on, it's improved the performance quite a bit. So I was curious, what did you do to create this so-called winter mode? So did you rewrite the whole entire autonomy driving algorithm, or you just improve a few functions such as lane keeping or mapping localizations, things like that?
It's not so much a technology change as just, I think, training, allowing optimization training for winter conditions versus summer conditions, and not trying to use the same one all year long.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have another question for Eric. You talked about autonomous driving and platooning. And we have the platooning in North Dakota right now with the leader-follower configuration that we're going to hear a little bit more about tomorrow, with some different types of flexibilities, but also some different operational concepts. So how is Montana looking to maybe utilize both of those types of autonomous trucking, the platooning leader-follower and the L4 driverless? And do you see the winter conditions posing maybe different challenges for those types of configurations?
Yeah, really good question. And honestly, platooning really got a lot of discussion during the session. Like I said, there was 2 different bills. So House Bill 97 is a platoon bill, and there's so many different models out there of what platoon operations look like that we ran into doing the research. So the first thing that we wrote into the bill is there's a requirement to do a feasibility study for the state, and winter conditions will be looked at in that feasibility study. The difficulty is finding any real useful information to put in there. So the approach we're taking in Montana is writing the rules into an administrative rule because they're easier to change than the actual statute. So that's the approach we're taking, and as we learn more, it should allow us to be a little more nimble and flexible with what we've done with our laws. More than likely what you're going to see with autonomous vehicles is they'll be allowed all over the state, rural roads, everything. Platoon operations are more than likely going to be restricted, similar to a triples configuration where it's an interstate only and allowed within a 2-mile radius of the interstate, which is quite different than what you're doing in North Dakota where they're out on 2-lane roads, but we'll have the flexibility to allow those. So if you had an operation in North Dakota, we may allow them to come a couple miles into Montana on a rural road. So we'll have a little bit of flexibility, but I would say platooning is going to be a little more stringent.
Well, on the dedicated platoon network, are there limitations on the configuration? Does it have to be 2 tractor semi-trailers? Can it be 2 double trailer combinations, or have you codified that yet?
Yeah, initially what you're going to see is straight trucks and then a truck tractor trailer combination, just one single trailer, restricted to 3 in a platoon.
3 in a platoon.
Is the way it's looking now, but keep in mind, we are doing the feasibility study, and so there's room, there may be some change within that. We'll see how that looks in the end, but that right now, that's kind of what it's looking like.
Okay. Other questions from the audience? If not, I have one for Justin. A very intriguing and cost-effective way of improving your localization by putting those signs on the side of the roadway. And so when you did that initially, I'm assuming that your ADS went through some training mode and learned what that landmark meant, even if the snow was encroaching on the side of the roadway, which would have changed the dimensional analysis of the cameras. So can you speak to that a little bit more, and how extensively did you do that, and what were the cost of those signs or posts that you used?
Okay, I'll try. First of all, we'll talk a little bit more about the process of creating the signs tomorrow, but in reality, it was a project in conjunction with, there's a Tasket Area Schools Collaborative, which is like a Pathways program that's very popular in northern Minnesota. The idea is that, that they have seven high schools or 7 districts that come together that then share kind of this joint resource about pathways for basically school to work and training opportunities in between. And so we worked with the manufacturing pathway to do a student project at Grand Rapids High School. So the cost of the materials, it was all funded through a local grant, and there's nothing really magical to the materials. It was, they pounded a steel post into the ground, and then the kids built them. So then it was 2x10s that they stained, and then they used their CNC class to design with some CAD programs and cut out the metal. So it was very homegrown, very student-led. The only rules were that the things they bolted on had to be, at least 6 feet off the ground, so they would not be covered by the snow. And that then we did May Mobility did all of their mapping after they remapped the areas where those were added after the installation.
All right.
We never, unfortunately, we weren't operating in the time before they had the fixtures installed, so we don't have data on how much it improved, but we know that there was a reduction in the in the uncertainty and the reliance on the IMU for in case of GPS drift. But
Okay. Oh, thank you.
I can't give you a perfect answer there. Sorry.
Okay. Other questions from the audience? Okay. If not, our networking reception is ready or not ready, Jody? Okay, so in a few minutes we'll have food and refreshments over here, and so please join us for our reception, which will start probably in a few minutes. But I want to thank everyone for your attentiveness and for your questions and for your interaction with the speakers. I think it's been a great day for us. We really appreciate the dialogue and the engagement. And so I look forward to talking with you later today, and see you tomorrow morning. Thank you.